Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us here on the Trucking Defense Network. Give me a thumbs up, Allison, if you've got good audio here. Somebody please tell me that I'm not on mute this time. We got it? Are we talking? Hello, hello, hello. All right. Very good. My name is Brendan Dawson, and I am not a lawyer, but I play one on TV. We are the Trucking Defense Network, and the Trucking Defense Network is an alliance of champions dedicated to protecting the industry that protects our great nation. And by being here today, all of you are now a part of this movement. You are all champions of trucking, and we thank you for being here today and for your support of this beloved industry. We're broadcasting today over YouTube and Facebook to all corners of the World Wide Web. And we are very fortunate to have two knowledgeable experts with us today. But our audience today is composed of a virtual who's who in trucking risk management. We are blessed today with friends old and new, so I want to give a quick shout out to some of the folks who have joined us today. So let's talk. Let's see. We've got, I'm proud to have on here Keith Dunlap from Gallagher Bassett. Keith, want to have you on the show soon. We've got Michelle Forsyth, a dear client who has some very deep concerns about what we're talking here today. So Michelle, we're going to get to your question first off. Chris Haney, Payne Trucking, thank you very much. Brian Bowles, we've got a lot of attorneys out here today. Lou Tabor, Saya Motor Freight, thanks for being here today. Dean Allen, good to see you again. Chuck Perry from Trans System up in Washington, one of the pretty much the sharpest flatbed operation on the road today. Lots of folks from Canada. John Farquhar, thanks for being with us here today. San Diego, Diego Borrego, John Mallory, good to have you with us again. And John Enright again from north of the border, so thank you very much. Many of you submitted questions for the panel when you registered for this event, and we're going to get to those. But we want to hear from you folks working from home or the office or out on the road. So please talk it up in the chat. This event is for you, and we want to hear from you. What are your concerns? What are what solutions do you have? So give me one moment here. I'm going to share a screen with you, show you a couple of slides. Not going to get too boring with it, but let's give you this right here. We should make that faster, I think. All right, so let's face it. We live in a very litigious society. That's not new to anybody. And trucking is in the crossroads. It won't surprise anybody today to know that insurance, commercial auto insurance loss ratios are upside down in a 7-year slide by as much as 112%. Nuclear verdicts are all the rage. And there's an alarming increase in litigated verdicts in excess of $10 million. But let's not lose sight of the fact that the cost of mediated claims and claims in general are increasing by as much as 50, 60, 70, even 100%. So a $20,000 verdict 5 or 6 years ago, or not verdict, but claim, might easily be $30,000 or $40,000 today. Many insurers have left the sector altogether, and many motor carriers have closed their doors over the rising cost of risk transfer. Lots of folks are screaming for tort reform as we continually face the threat of profit-hungry billboard attorneys with litigation financing and reptile legal practices. And I know we have attorneys from both sides of the bar today. And so this is important that we get both perspectives. So before we go dissing the other side, I know Chris Haney will have some choice words to say about Mr. Gordon McKernan up there. But we've got some good people out there as well. Joe Freed is with us today, and he is not only an attorney for the plaintiff, but he is a tireless advocate for trucking safety, and I hold the highest respect for him as a gentleman and a scholar. For the rest of the plaintiff's attorneys who are with us here today, who I don't know personally, you are as welcome in our house as we are in yours. So, one moment here. I got to get my button. All right. So, we're not here to complain about the lawyers. We're not here to wring our hands and cry out for tort reform. We have a choice today. And the choice we have is to allow ourselves to be victims of circumstance or to stand up and defend ourselves against circumstance. It is my personal belief, both as a person and as an industry, that we are not the product of our circumstance. We are the product of our response to circumstance. And that's what we want to talk about today. What are we here to do? This is motor carrier self-defense, jiu-jitsu for truckers. So without further ado, I would like to introduce a dear friend and colleague. Like myself, he is an inventor and an entrepreneur. He has more than 25 years experience as a private investigator. He's seen all manner of truck crash claims go awry, and many of them that have been settled very favorably. He is a fierce supporter of truth and justice. From McLean Investigations and Ready Response, please welcome Mr. Kevin McLean.
Good afternoon, Brendan, and good afternoon to everybody out there on the Truckers Defense Network for our inaugural presentation. Really appreciate it. And as Brendan indicated, my name is Kevin McLean, president of McLean Investigations, and also I'm the founder of the patented technology known as Ready Response. Ready Response stands for React to Emergencies and Accidents by Detectives with Investigative Response, which is what we're going to be talking about here today is rapid resolution. From rapid response, we can get that information, which is so critical and I think has been missed so far along. And like I started out 25 years ago as a plaintiff's investigator, working on the other side of the case. And like I say, it's all about the facts and it's all about truth and justice, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. Everybody on this call today needs to know the facts. Nobody can afford to have surprises. So I hope today is going to be a very spirited discussion and that we can educate everybody. And maybe at the end of the day, we can also save some lives that might be on the road from both sides of the fence. So thank you very much, Brendan, for having me today.
All right, Kevin, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your time and your expertise with us here today. Our next panelist here is a very important person. Many folks cry out for change. Our next guest is doing something about it. Mark Tuckman is rewriting the book on truck insurance, and he's doing it from the perspective of the trucker. Mark started his career many years ago. He has built a trucking operation in many aspects across all verticals of the market, ran it very successfully into a multi-million-dollar organization, and has now exited the trucking business in favor of all things insurance related. He is now the chief executive officer at TIT National Insurance. Please welcome once again, Mr. Mark Tuckman. Take it away, Mark. Well, let me get you on here, Mark.
There we go.
All right.
Well,
you didn't get your applause. There you go. Cheers for Mark Tuckman.
I love the applause. I love all the showbiz pieces that you're putting together here. And Kevin, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Welcome everybody. Excited to be here. And I'm the CEO of Tip National, and Brendan kind of talked me up a bit there. I spent the first part of my career on the transportation side, and so I'm probably what the worst description of an insurance guy is. It's one that started on the trucking side and takes that experience and really all the pieces that I used to think maybe was right, that I could be known to say maybe I was wrong on some of those. But having that experience and now looking at it from the side on the insurance, and then really from the risk, and I think a lot of what Brendan and Kevin were talking about is about just doing the right thing, and I think if we do the right thing and we pay attention to the things that are most important, which in my view is the driver. I think that's always been what I viewed as the most important part of the puzzle. I think we can succeed in changing some of the things that we're seeing in the market, from high insurance rates, but also some of these accidents and verdicts. And you'll probably be surprised I'm not always there defending the insurance side of the business. So I think doing the right thing and putting the best driver in the seat is what we strive to do. So look forward to a spirited conversation. So.
Hang on.
Hopefully that didn't have anything to do with me. Kevin, did we lose Brendan?
I think we might have lost him there for a second. we can take it.
Well, then we have free reign.
That's right. We can rock and roll now.
Oh God! So beware. The public is going to hear what our perspective is without
any filter, right?
Yeah.
All right. How's that? We back? We better?
We are. You were about to get on a tangent, but you've saved us, or saved the viewers from that.
All right, very good. Are we back on? Everything squared away? How about all the technical issues? Everything looking good out there, Allison? All right, very good. Thank you very much. I apologize for the feedback and the little technical mishap, but we're through it and we're moving on. Mark, tell us about your approach to insurance with the focus on the driver.
Well, so I think when you look at insurance, and I view that as that driver is actually that piece, right? I think that's the most important part. The truck doesn't drive itself. So we need to look at what the requirements are for that driver. And so my view is that the standards, and I had a submission today that came across my desk, and the agent's telling me about, well, the drivers, they don't have 2 years experience, some have 6 months, some have this. I mean, this is a big risk. And really, where is the training? Where is what you're putting on the road? Really, where's that coming from? So I think what we need to do is not only set those requirements at a certain level, but we got to help everybody involved so that they can actually deliver the freight and put that truck on the road, and actually, the driver in it being trained and all the things with it. So our approach is pretty easy. It's about helping the motor carrier, and that's what our program is really all about.
Okay, so all right. So it's been my experience that insurance is typically a passive transaction where I buy the insurance, I go out, I crash, you pay. Now, as a managing general agent, let me make sure I understand this for myself and for our audience. As a managing general agent, you have underwriting authority, right?
Right.
But it's not your money. You're underwriting someone else's money. So you have to answer to somebody else for that money, right?
Well, yeah. So you have reinsurance. So, I mean, MGAs are reinsured by different, whether it's London or different reinsurers throughout the country. So those underwriting requirements and things that you're putting in place are standards that when you when we put together a program and then we pitch it or put that in front of the reinsurer, this is what we're anticipating doing. So it's not that they're dictating that, but it's really our experience and our know-how is what they're reinsuring are really betting on with us.
Okay. And so when you're talking about helping those motor carriers along, what does that look like? Because when I was in the safety chair, I'd get a visit about every other year from the risk manager, and they'd come in and say, "Hey, you're doing a great job."
Well, yeah, I think we
And
all. That's it. That's well. So if you look at what and my experience, we had 3,000 drivers on the road, right? So that's an awful lot of risk across the country, right? We were in almost 48 states, and so the perspective is that, and you mentioned it, and this is the absolute wrong perspective for an insured to have, that hey, I have insurance, so that'll pay for the risk, right? Ultimately, your insurance record, your MCSA score, your ISS score, all those things, that's your license plate or your image, right? So when you're looking at it and you have an insurance policy, yeah, it's there for those events that you couldn't control per se. So your first line of defense doesn't want to be your insurance policy. That wants to be your last line of defense. And your first line needs to be your safety, your compliance, all of your recruiting, your training, all of those things that are really going to have everybody win, right? So if you're successful and you put a better driver that cares on the road, well, then that's going to equate to lower premiums and better performance and all the things alike, but also it's a safer, you're putting better drivers, safer roads, and everybody wins. So.
Yeah, and let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about risk management and the pillars of risk management for anybody who might not understand this, because once I understood this concept, it was an eye-opener for me. What can you do with risk? As we say, a ship is safe in harbor, but that's not what ships are for. If you keep your truck parked, no risk. So when you drive on the road, you encounter a risk. Your options are to mitigate that risk, do what you can to reduce the possibility of it happening. You can just accept the risk and not worry about it, or you can transfer that risk. And that's what insurance is. You're transferring your risk over to somebody else, which means you still have to mitigate. So transferring risk does not eliminate mitigation. Is that a fair statement, Mark?
It absolutely is, and I think there's different ways to transfer risk, right? So, insurance is probably your most expensive way. I think a culture that you create within the organization is probably the cheapest way to do it. And I think when I was on the transportation side, that's what we spent the most time on, was really getting that buy-in and getting that person who's operating that vehicle to care. And a lot of places, you look at the employee versus the owner operator. Well, that owner operator, that's his vehicle, that's his image, that's his what he's holding himself out for hire with. So there's a lot of different cases, and I saw something across earlier about employee versus owner operator. I mean, those are the different pieces that maybe would transfer risk in a better way or not. I mean, so I think we talk about insurance premiums, we talk about loss ratios. I mean, so and we're, when that insurer gets that renewal quote, or they get the quote from a new operation, whatever it may be, they say, "Oh my God, that's a lot of money." Well, when you look at those claims that you were just talking about, the $5,000 claims aren't 5,000 anymore; they're 20, 30,000, and then you have the negligence factor of when the motor carrier or the owner operator himself isn't doing the right thing. And I think that's where this spirals out of control. Mm-hmm. So I think transfer of risk is a great point. I think we need to look at the different ways that we mitigate the risk in general. And instead of thinking that I can transfer it, maybe it's, hey, let me try to eliminate it. So
Yeah, so you can't. Transfer is the last resort. Mitigation is the first. Acceptance would be the last. You agree?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that frustrates me, kind of being on the other side of the fence, is that the acceptance or what's acceptable today maybe shouldn't be. And I think maybe we delve into that a little bit more
All
later.
right.
So
Let's get into that in a little bit, but I want to move over to the claim side for a moment and switch over to Kevin here. Kevin, you've got a lot of experience on the claim side. So Mark's the one accepting the risk transfer. You're the one who's trying to mitigate it on the back end. You're trying to keep from losing all this money. What is your experience tell you about the way motor carriers, third-party administrators, and claims officials are managing those claims today? What do you see that needs improvement, and what are you doing to improve it for our clients?
Certainly. First of all, usually when we get involved in the case, when we'll get contacted by a TPA or the self-insured or the company themselves or the captive, it can be anywhere from 2 months to 2 years later. So now we have to go back out and recreate that scene. We have to go out and try to locate now witnesses, which being a transit community like we are now, trying to find that information becomes 10 times harder, which of course then drives up your cost. If we can lower that time frame, in other words, where we can get a rapid response, we're going to get a rapid resolution. Imagine this: everybody's into telematics, which is an extremely important thing we have to have now in regards to risk management in the trucking space. Those telematics are great, but I don't think a lot of these companies are using them to their full effect. And I'll give you an example. You just had a crash happen. Okay, that crash happens. You got the data that's come in from that crash. You've got scene information. You've got potential license plates and other things like that. Those are witnesses. You've got a GPS location. Everybody this day and age has got a smartphone. They're citizen journalists. What are they doing? They're taking pictures. They're tweeting about this. They are shooting a YouTube video. Not only is that evidence, but those are also witnesses. If you can speed up that time frame, where now all of a sudden the defense is coming out and getting information, actually even faster than the plaintiffs are, it's going to help mitigate that risk. At least you're going to know. You're not going to have any surprises. You're going to know, is our client really at fault? Or is there some mitigating factors here that maybe nobody knew about? Or perhaps is it one of these type of fake claims, which we could talk about a little bit later on about the New Orleans claims and how much money that cost all these trucking companies because they were kind of, they weren't per se proactive. They were reactive in it. And it took a while for all this information to catch up, to start connecting the dots to see that this was a scam going on. So I think the quicker that you can respond to the information, getting out there, getting that data, the faster you can get resolutions to your cases.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Here's a comment from the gallery. I don't know who your father's mustache is, but he says, those of us that service transportation are more than willing to help the motor carrier improve their safety and risk management. But we can only help those who are willing to help themselves. Motor carriers need to step up and own the issues, deficiencies, and shortcomings. And you did mention a bit about technology. I want to say, my friends, and I am a part of this group, I come from trucking. I'm a CDL holder. I've been in the safety chair. And our industry has only very recently come kicking and screaming out of the paper era. Thank you, John Farquhar. John Farquhar, he understands the situation very well. He's the man who's going to show up in your office and tell you what you're doing wrong. And you have to listen to him or pay more. So that's it. Motor carrier self-defense. What are we going to do as truckers? And it's that technology aspect that we are really slow to adopt. And the only industry, from my empirical observation, that is slower than trucking to adapt technology is insurance. I saw a show with Keith Dunlap the other day, and I wish I could find this quote from him, but he explained that he has an astronomical number of cases in litigation on his desk. And I want to say, I don't remember, Mark, maybe you saw it, but it was in the thousands per year. So Keith, we want to get you on the show. Please jump in on the comments if you've got any comment about that. We must adapt or fail is one of my personal mantras. I want to get to a question from a client here. This is from Michelle Forsyth. She is the safety director at Accelerated Services. They're a car hauler, and she asks, "We have video, GPS, ELD that show the driver is not at fault, but the police report states they are when they are in an accident." And she goes on to ask, how can we overcome this prejudice against drivers? And I repeat that, prejudice against drivers, without having to jump through all the legal hoops. And before we start to answer this question, I want to get at the tone. Michelle's tone here. This is a tone of desperation and false accusation. False accusation is a deep human fear. I don't fear many things, but I fear being falsely accused. And so it's happening again and again. And in part, and we'll get to this in later events down the road, we are responsible for our own image in trucking, and we're responsible for having that prejudice there. But how do we get beyond that? And she says she's got the evidence, she's got the GPS, she's got ELD, she's got accident plan, she's doing everything right. And I know these folks, these are really good people. So let's start with Kevin. What's your response to Michelle?
The first response I would have to Michelle is never assume, always verify. Now, what does that mean? That means someone going out to that scene, someone looking at that scene and comparing it to what those police reports show. I can tell you from experience that there's been cases where the accident reconstructionists for the state police went out and they missed it. They took all the marks, all the skid marks they marked were the wrong vehicle, which totally led to a whole different dynamic about what actually had. So we can't assume that that report is accurate. We have to go out, we have to verify that information. You also have to look at the reports and see exactly how much, information is in there, because most police reports, keep in mind, what is their objective? Is it really to solve what really happened here? Or is it to open back up that interstate or that highway or whatever it is? They want to get that thing opened back up as quick as possible. So sometimes that information is not accurate. And I can tell you more times than not, there's misspellings, there's missed numbers about the VIN numbers or the driver's license number or the date of birth, all those different types of things. All those factors come into play. So you want to go back out there and you want to verify it yourself. Is what they're saying accurate and correct in that police report?
So you're suggesting that law enforcement doesn't always get it right?
Yeah, well, I hate to say that, but yes. Unfortunately, I've worked a lot of innocence project cases too, so I could tell you a lot of war stories there. But that's what you cannot assume. And I think we make that mistake. We look at a police report and we assume all the data in there is accurate and correct, and we just go off of that. And that's where mistakes are made all the time in any kind of legal investigation, whether it's a civil case or criminal case.
Well, you've basically just made the case that Michelle needs to have her own police force. And for all our motor carriers who are out there, you know what they're saying right now? They're saying, holy crap, I have a hard enough time getting people in the chair. I have a hard enough time keeping my stock moving, and now you want me to do my own investigation. So who's supposed to help Michelle with that when they're out there on scene alone? Well, any ideas?
I didn't say for her to do her own investigation, because that's also an issue that may come up in depositions or anything else. The motivation factor. If you're someone who's employed by somebody, do you have a bias of the facts that you're going to find versus having an independent third party come in and look at everything objectively?
Well, okay, but let's start by gathering the information. If the object is the truth, it's the driver that is out there. They're the first line of defense always. And knowledge, of course, is power. When you get that information, you have it, and then you can't afford the surprises. Mark, what's your response to Michelle?
Well, I think you saw what happened in Florida now, where now that's admissible, right? Where you got the videos and things, and unless I'm mistaken, Kevin or Brendan, correct me there, but I think, and I see police reports too often, right? So, fortunately, we have great TPAs, Keith being one of them that handles our claims, and we're relying on, as well as Kevin, which we're using him as well. So that, I think the biggest thing that you see is the delay in not getting that claim reported. And I tell you, from my standpoint, the one thing that infuriates me more than anything is to see a claim come through and it's weeks, months old. And so that's just unacceptable. So if you want to protect yourself, I think what Kevin's saying is you need to know, and the telematics is a real easy way to do that, where there's notifications, at least in our system, that'll immediately notify of an impact, right? So then our call center's on the phone with the driver saying what happened, is someone hurt, all of those different things. But the quicker that you can know about a claim or know about an issue, well, then you can gather those facts. And I think if anybody would reach out to Kevin, I was astounded about what he does as far as all of that, the witnesses that he's talking about. All of that is evidence, the videos, the tweets, the chats, all of that stuff that really is in your defense. So not that the police report's really important. I got to tell you, I mean, that's the first thing that I'm going to, looking at, reading what the officer put. And you know what, listen, I think the boys in blue, protect us and defend us and do all those things. I would hope that they're going to be accurate and get it right. But let's face it, you got a wreck out there, you got fire, you got all the other people that are there. Kind of putting together all those facts isn't an easy thing. So, but I think the timeliness of it and the driver is, and Brendan, going back to your app and what you do, that driver now has control and can take those pictures, gather that evidence. They're the front line there, as long as they're not hurt or something. So I think it's unfortunate what we're hearing today, but I think the data is extremely powerful. So we got to do our best to gather it and use it, right?
It is. And Michelle's doing everything right. She's got all the tools, she's got all the tricks, she's got everything out there. So to answer your question, Michelle, we can't prevent you from jumping through the hoops. However, what we can do is jump through some of the hoops for you, and then the rest of the hoops we can make it easier to jump through. So the takeaway here is rapid response leads to rapid resolution. This is our mantra. It's yours. It should be yours as well. If you're a motor carrier, insurance carrier, rapid response equals rapid resolution. Do not let your claim go late. Get it in. When you have a serious problem or you're being falsely accused, gather that evidence. If you need more evidence, let's get Kevin on the job. He can be there with his tools. He can have that evidence coming in from social media, lickety split. So that's where we are. Michelle, I hope that answers your question. We can certainly get more into there later on. I'd love to hear from you on that. Mr. Rich Bren, dear friend of ours, has asked, let's see, where is he here? And this question has come in a couple of times from Rich Bren, from Mauricio Berber. How do we avoid nuclear verdicts? And that's the big topic these days. It's all over the news. Everybody remembers the Werner situation from 2019 and that verdict. And that if you don't remember it, Werner truck, West Texas, snowstorm, minding his own business, doing his job. Passenger comes from the other direction across the median, spins out, hits the Werner guy in the midships. Werner winds up paying 40, what was it, 80, 90 million dollars, I think that was. And the reason that ruffled a lot of feathers is because the facts of the actual actions of the driver were not a part of the case. The driver was doing everything right at the time of the accident. So the circumstance of the accident didn't influence the case. What influenced the case was Werner's policies on the back end that influenced the case. And so what that leads to is there is no correlation between fault and liability. So just because you're not at fault does not mean you won't get sued. So report every claim, whether you're at fault, whether it's below your deductible or your SIR, report it, because sometimes they come back and bite you later. Take control. All right, very good. Let's see. John Stanley, another good friend of ours. The industry has accepted the statement that we are compliant. What more will we need to do? Well, all right, compliance is the base level. Federal, we know there's rules in place for safety, and that's as far as the government has gone. The motoring public expects more. What is this called? Help me out here, Mark. I believe it is a duty.
Duty to defend?
Not a duty to defend, but it's our responsibility of care. We have to have the responsibility of care for the public as we move through the world. And so compliance is the baseline. It is not the standard. We are held to a higher standard, and we need to rise above compliance in order to protect ourselves. Mark, you have any comment on that?
Well, on the last piece that you were just saying, I think obviously nuclear verdicts that revolve around negligence, right? So compliance, I absolutely agree, is a baseline, and I think that baseline is also changing in time, right? I think you have technology, you have things evolving. I mean, look at these iPhones. Look at what we didn't have when we were kids, and I don't want to date any of us, but it's night and day. So that baseline, I think, is always up for negotiation in my view. So I think if you really delve back down into it and you really talk about the driver and what the driver is doing out on the road, and then I think when you talk about that Werner case, then you're really talking about those files and then the training and all the different things. And I believe weather was part of that case as well, where it was there was a snowstorm. Should that truck even have been on the road? I mean, there's all these different things that in a lot of views, and my perspective today is from the insurance perspective that I'm talking to you today about. But so I'm not going to dictate or say to a motor carrier, here's what you need to do or how to do it or all of those things. That's really where a John Stanley probably comes in, where, you know, his experience and consulting and things like that.
Whoa. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mark, but why? Why won't you dictate to a motor carrier? If you have a symbiotic relationship and you have to pay for the risk transfer for that motor carrier, why are you not going to dictate?
Well, I think there's got to be a clear line of delineation there, right? So I think there's a lot of different insurance programs out there, and there's a lot of different underwriting requirements. That's one of the problems. I think that's what we're trying to do with a few different focus groups and different things that we're doing is to really level set that, or have more of a uniform practice that the public, everybody would buy in on and agree with, which is obviously a steep hill to climb. But I don't think there's any way that every motor carrier, every situation, every operation has its own unique qualities, characteristics. So for us to dictate, or we can say, here here's what works for us, right? That's really what we're saying. Here's the data. Here's what we found. Here's the loss history results that are gonna return better results. Now that might align exactly with what the motor carrier is thinking, and that's great. But at the end of the day, I think the problem is, and the reason why you see drivers that maybe are on the road that shouldn't be, is that dispatcher maybe that's moving that truck needs to move it. And you know what, Walmart, and maybe I shouldn't use Walmart, or whatever the shipper is like, you better get that load there, and or we're not going to pay you, or whatever it is. So you got a lot of different factors that are playing into it. But so I don't think it's the insurance company or industry to dictate. I think it's ours to hold that you accountable, and if you don't meet the requirements that we're saying or putting out there, then you wouldn't use our program, and that's okay, I guess. So I don't know. You tell me. I mean,
well, I don't know. It seems that there's a layer of opacity between the insured and the insurer that is not serving our industry well. And by the way, for everybody out there, profits over safety never plays well to the motoring public or juries, and it plays straight into the hands of the reptile practitioners. So let's move on here for 1 second.
Hey, Brendan.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'd like to share with our audience also that fact pattern you described on the Warner verdict is a very similar case, the exact same fact pattern. It was snow, ice, vehicles traveling southbound. Our client is traveling northbound. Vehicle hits black ice, comes across, T-bones, crash. We get the call immediately. We respond out there. I remember driving out there in the ice and the snow. The trooper is still on site. We find out from the trooper that the driver who hit the black ice, that he actually had drugs in his car. Of course, he's not deceased. Our objectives were then to get the black box off of the unit, to get it over to a Kenworth dealer to have them downloaded. This was before ELDs, okay? Within 2 or 3 days, we had this case completed, and there was zero exposure to the company at all. So you got to think about this. Between the Warner case and the case I'm talking about that we did, what was the difference? I don't know if anybody ever went out there to do an investigation on the Warner case at all. Could there have been some other mitigating factors there? I don't know. But the other thing they should have took in consideration from experience, West Texas jurors. I do jury research also. I could have told you that instantaneously. You need to try to get that into another venue, because I've done research, jury research on West Texas jurors before.
Yeah, that's Texas, especially Harris County, Texas, where Houston is. It was tried in Houston. That is known commonly as a judicial hellhole. So, team, take that down. We'll make that a topic for a future discussion. Judicial hellholes. We had a client with a similar fact pattern in Wyoming. And although they're not allowed to talk about it, I think they're going to come out okay on there. So we talked a little bit about technology and telematics, and so we've got one from Scott Grandis here. Mark, does your program use telematics as a part of insurance? And if so, why? Can you get into that relationship between technology and data and risk management?
Well, I think the technology and all the tools associated with it, whether it's telematics, the ELDs, all of those different pieces are absolute pieces of the puzzle. And so our program, the telematics is mandatory. Cameras are preferred, but with that, we integrate with all the ELD systems as well. So there's not the hardware component of it. But I think kind of going back to what we started to talk about, the insurance is just one part of using those technology and tools. I think you have the expense part of it as well. So, and then just the awareness. I think the driver not being watched, and I think that's probably one of the biggest pieces that you hear as a negative, is that the driver feels like Big Brother is monitoring them, watching them. What we do with that data is that, you know, it's a third party that's sharing it with the motor carrier, and then the motor carrier is sharing that with the driver, and then the driver can see their habits, they could see their hard braking, they can see their speeding, and then they could see the results of it. So yeah, from an insurance perspective, we're collecting the data, we're looking at the data, we're trying to correlate different things that maybe would make it a safer operation and such. But I think the biggest part of that for us is really giving our insureds the tools that they can operate and manage their business better. So,
Okay, so your clients are, if I'm your client, I have to have telematics on my fleet.
if you're one of our insureds,
If I'm one of your insureds, which is no problem because telematics are everywhere now anyway. They're federally mandated, so that's there. But what do I have to give you out of telematics?
You don't have to give us anything. So
you just require that I have them. You don't require a peek into our habits.
No, well, obviously that's available, but the third party company that we're using is using that, and they could use it as more of a analytics for you, so that you operate your company better. Mm-hmm. But I think if you look at that data and you look at the results, I think we're trying to look at that. And a lot of people say, are you using that data for underwriting purposes or whatever? Ultimately, well, wouldn't you? Yeah, you absolutely would. But it's not, you know, that and I always say this, if you're doing the right thing, then you really don't have to worry about it. And I think, you know, if you're operating your operation professionally and safely, well, then what do you have to worry about sharing that data? That would be a tool to better yourself, right? So I think people look at the negative side of things instead of the positive. And really, the positive is a lot of companies have telematics. A lot, obviously, all the trucks, the ELD mandates and things like that. It's out there. The problem is nobody's really drilling down on that data and seeing what is actually causing some of these accidents.
Mm-hmm. And I want to address Big Brother for a minute. Everybody, a lot of us remember reading George Orwell, 1984 in high school. It looked something like this.
I just want to know how you're doing that, because that's
yeah, it's tricky.
I don't want to scare everybody either. So.
And that's the Big Brother that everybody talks about. Everybody talks about the Big Brother who's watching everything that you do, which was the underlying theme of 1984. There's another Big Brother there, and I want to talk about the Leave It to Beaver kind of brother, the Wally who's looking after you. Because here's the truth. You have to watch what you're doing. And I don't care if you've got 2 trucks or 20,000 trucks. You have to monitor what they're doing. They're your assets, even if it's a leased on.
Unless you're a broker, you should be.
Unless you're a broker. Oh, that's another discussion. I know where you're headed with that. And I think you're taking a dig at the leased owner operators out there.
No,
yeah, that's the thing, is the data is out there. We cannot pretend that the data is not. And that was the big deal that we went through when telematics first came on the scene. I went through it in 2004, putting PeopleNet in a fleet of 35 power units. It's like, hey, I don't want everybody knowing what I'm doing all the time. Well, it's not your truck. You know, if you want to drive that, if you want to be invisible in this day and age, there's only a couple of ways you can do it. You have to pay cash for everything, never turn your cell phone on, and own your own truck. And I don't know how you're going to get paid, but without that data, it's not going to happen. And again, here's something from John Farquhar. It's one thing to have a robust telematics system. It's another thing to use it and learn from the data available. And this is the double-edged sword.
Yep. This
is a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. For example, we have driver-facing cameras. So you've got information about your driver's behavior. We've got very intelligent cameras that can pick out distracted driving. They can pick out cell phone use. They can pick out seatbelt use. They can do all of these things. If you don't remediate those incidents, when the plaintiff's attorneys come in and pull your files, they're going to look at that. And can you imagine how that's going to play? Well, you had all of these incidents, and you didn't do anything about them. We've seen dash cam footage of people counting money while going 65 miles an hour. If you don't do something about that, that will come back to haunt you. So coming back, how to avoid nuclear verdicts. How to avoid nuclear verdicts. Number one, don't crash. Number two, if you do crash, don't let it go to court. Right, Kevin? If it never gets to court, there cannot be a nuclear verdict. What's your response to that, Kevin?
I think that's very important. And two things I want to talk about. One, Mark talked about drilling down on the data. You know, you've got these robust telematics systems, and I don't think everybody's really using them to the full capacity. But also the other part of on nuclear verdicts and not going to court, that you try to resolve them prior to going to court, is some of the things I don't think people are thinking about in certain perspectives is social media. Social media. What does your trucking company tell you? In other words, what is it saying? Is it all about speed and efficiency, or is it about safety? What are the buzzwords they have on their marketing material? And then more importantly than that, how about your drivers? What do they post out there in social media? Because trust me, if I was on the other side of a case and I get a case with a driver, I'm going to background that driver and I'm going to drill down on their social media. I'm going to get an entire profile of that person. So be proactive. Start looking at these things and start asking these questions. Maybe role play a certain accident at your facility and say, okay, what would have happened? This crash would have happened. And let's just see how it would have played out.
And yeah, I'd like to do an entire episode just on stupid shit drivers post on social media. So if you, for our motor carrier friends out there, if you are not monitoring your driver's social media, I encourage you to do so. Connect with your drivers and look at their profiles. They say they do stupid things out there. Many of them taking videos while they're driving, where they're taking their own videos and posting it on social media with hands off the wheel and never checking the mirrors and posting comments about eating Mini Coopers and stuff like that. It's stuff that is going to get you in trouble if you wind up in court. And the trick is to stay out of court. John Stanley is in here with another comment. Once we have found the data, we also need to ensure we are properly training management how to coach the drivers on the data. Too many of our managers in the industry are afraid or inexperienced on how to get properly engaged with drivers. Kevin touched on it. John's touching on it right now. This is culture. This is driver culture. What culture are you running in your company? And also, how is that culture either keeping your drivers in the seats, or how is that culture making your drivers leave? And Mark, I want you to touch on this. I want you to get into this maybe even a little deeper, because we have a so-called driver shortage in trucking these days, which is a whole different discussion altogether. I don't believe it's true. Mark Tuckman, take it away.
Well, I'm on the fence. I think a year ago, I think we had too many trucks and we didn't have enough drivers. Today, I think there's a lot of different paradigms or situations where, you know, with the whole COVID crisis and everything that we're dealing with, I think, you know, your demand is definitely driving some things. So, but I think, and my mantra when I was on the carrier side was you could never have enough drivers, and I think part of the culture is always to be recruiting. So, you know, I had 100 and something terminals around the country, and if I had a terminal manager that wasn't recruiting on a daily basis, you can ask my HR people and those folks alike, those were the ones that didn't perform well. So if you want to make the right decisions and you want to be able to take a driver off the road, if you don't have another one, then you're not going to be able to make that good decision, right? So I think, Brendan, the culture is really where it starts. I think you see some of these carriers, and they call it driver first, right? I think that's absolutely where you got to be. I think that the driver sitting in that seat and being on the road and look at it from a shower to a rest area to whatever. Think about it. When you roll out of bed in the morning, you get to go into the bathroom. You could shave, you could shower, you could have a meal. These guys got to get out of their truck, all those things. So I think we got to really look at the driver element, and these guys are good guys. I mean, listen, I'm the first one that's going to get behind them, right? I'm also the first one that's going to call. I won't swear. I swear a lot, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to call. Well, you know what? On it when
you're gonna go Wally on him. You're gonna go Wally Cleaver.
Yeah. And my company's was Beaver. That was the name of my company. It was Beaver. Beaver Express. It started that, but it was BeavX. So it's funny that you bring up the Beaver element. So, but at the end of the day, I think that's really got to be the element and where change needs to come from. Did I answer your question there? I got kind of off on a tangent.
No, I think it's a good start, Mark. I think it's a good start. We know that change has to take place, and we know that change has to take place from within. Because if we hold our breath, waiting for change to take place from without, we will suffocate. So we must respond to the circumstance, not complain about it. And so that's yeah. Oh, here we go. Here's John Farquhar again. Until the store shelves are empty, there is no shortage of drivers. Well, John, we're going to have you on the show to talk about that, I'm sure. Very good. Hey, we're coming up on our last 3 minutes. Kevin McLean, give us your closing thoughts here.
The closing thoughts are that everybody on this call, we've been talking about how to more be efficient on how we operate and how we mitigate risk and the claims out there. And I think that for the most part, majority of your fleets, and even the smaller owner operators and stuff, have all been putting telematics in, but it's never been used to its full capacity. And I go back to what Mark had said, drilling down into that data. There's information there, not just from the data, but from the videos themselves and stuff like that can really help you on the mitigation of your claim. You can find witnesses, you can find information, you can identify surveillance cameras or traffic cameras or whatever it may be. Those are the type of things that I do not think are being utilized, that could be utilized to really help tell the full picture and the full story about what's going on.
Excellent. Thank you, Kevin. You can reach Kevin at McLeanPI at gmail.com. He has some very amazing tools, very impressive tools to help all claims managers, TPAs get ahead and control the narrative, control the claim. Thank you very much. And Mark Tuckman, final thoughts, please.
Wow. There's too many to maybe get them all, but I'll just say, I think we need to raise the bar, right? I think that overall, and that's not just with our driver. I mean, and if we're going to raise the bar with the driver, we got to help the driver. We need to help the image of the trucking industry. But I think there's a lot of work there to be done. I think, and that's going to take dollars and money. And I think insurance is one place where we need to help the motor carrier instead of just dictate. But I think if you could take one thing away, and if I had one wish, that if there's a motor carrier out there and you have an issue, just raise your hand, pick up the phone, call the claim in. If you're going to use an expert like Kevin or John Staley or somebody, use those third-party people to really get to that data, to protect that data so that you have that to defend your case. And if you're wrong, you're wrong, but at least you know it. And listen, we need to protect the public as well. So I think going back to let's do the right thing, I think we need to do the right thing across all the pieces of the puzzle here.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mark. We must make the change from within. You can reach Mark, mark.tuckman@tipnational.com. I'm Brendan. You can reach me, Brendan, at accidentplan.com. Mark is right. When if you don't know, raise your hand, call us. We will help figure it out. Everything we do here is to defend ourselves. We must take it upon ourselves to do so. With that, I thank you all very much for being here, joining us here today. We're going to do this once a month. Look for the next invitation. Please subscribe at the link below. For those of you watching later, who couldn't make it, this will be on our YouTube channel for reference at any time. Have a great day, everybody, and safe travels to all.